I'm Matt Okada, and I'm stepping into the Warzone.
Let's get ready to rumble! Step into the war zone! 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 Friday night war zone! Friday night war zone! Hey, yo,
what's going on, everybody? I'm Joe Morley, and welcome to the War Zone. You guys already know my co-host, Mike on the mic, and I got a special guest for you today, the owner of the BallBlast Football podcast, a researcher for the NFL Fantasy Live. He can also be heard on NFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm just going to call him Football 24/7 because that's what he talks. Mr. Matt Okada, how you doing today?
That is a solid nickname. I think I'm going to take that to heart because that's pretty much my life, 24/7, 365. We even just talked right before we came on about how I wish I could be as big of a fan of other sports as I used to be, but when I do football as much as I do, it's hard. So football 24/7.
That's actually a good nickname, Joe. Good job with that.
Yep, I'm writing it down. Put it in my Twitter bio.
Well, when I asked him to come on, and he was like, "Well, can we talk football? I love talking football." And I was like, "Of course we're going to talk football. Yes." Like football has turned, and I told you this off air, like football has turned into a 12-month conversation. Like there's no downtime in football, especially in now fantasy football. Now that I've got into this and the podcast, and I didn't know how fantasy was a 24/7 365 thing, and it's crazy how much it keeps going.
Yeah, and with the rise of Dynasty, like even if you don't play Dynasty, there's a lot of stuff going on in the offseason. People who play normal redraft fantasy are getting excited about the draft more than they used to. But with the rise of Dynasty fantasy football, now, regular Joes who just play in leagues with their friends are watching rookie prospects and tuning into the draft for the entire thing and getting super excited in April about the upcoming fantasy season and doing drafts in May. It's pretty crazy stuff, but I'm here for it.
Dynasty leagues, man, those are the most fun sometimes. I'm in a dynasty league I've been in for like 10 years since I was like 13 years old. It's pretty awesome to look back at my teams too, because like the league keeps the history.
Mm-hmm.
Holy smokes. I can go back 10 years and see what my team looked like.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff.
When I first started fantasy football, I used to make fun of this guy in my league because he knew everybody's name, everything about everybody. And we're like, what were you doing? Scouting this guy when he was in sixth grade? Like you knew about him he was like, yeah. But then I didn't know how much research, and it's amazing. It's amazing how much knowledge and stuff that you bring, and your everybody that you work with. Like, hey, I look up to you guys. Like, it's amazing.
I mean, it's fun, and we sometimes when people ask me what I do as a researcher at the NFL Network, I say my job is to make people on TV sound smart. So sometimes it's less about us being as smart as people think we are and just finding ways to make them sound smart. But it's a job I love to do. And, it's really rewarding to have television featuring information that you found on players or stats or putting together segments and things like that. It's really cool stuff. So I love working for the network for exactly that reason. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm jealous.
Yeah, you're doing a good job. And I saw on your Twitter that you call yourself the certified wide receiver scout. Is that yourself, or did they give you that nickname as well as a football 24/7 that we just gave you?
So that one actually comes from doing a program called the Scouting Academy. It costs a decent amount of money, and it's a bunch of former players, GMs, front office people who put together this program to actually teach scouts how to scout. So I did a basically 3-month program on wide receivers to the point where they certified me as like a NFL level scout of that position. And they have like sections for every position. And I never got around to the other positions, but I started with wide receiver because I wanted to know that position best. So that's kind of where my bread and butter is. My best position to scout is wide receiver for sure because of all that info that I got, and it was a really cool experience.
I'm gonna have to get you out here to scout me. I'm about 6'3", 450 pounds, and I'm going.
Oh boy,
he's gonna up my draft stock right now.
There you go.
Hey man, Javonte Smith. Everybody's ragging on him for being skinny, so you don't have that problem.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like I'm not there. I'm not skinny. We go, but we'll go into our first question right now. Since I just want to see your background on wide receivers, and that's a big question going into the draft. Is the NFL draft is what? Oh man, like less than
2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks from yesterday is when it starts.
We've been over here doing a lot of mock drafts on ourselves. We all take a team, and I do have the number 4 pick in our mock draft that we're doing on Saturday. So I saw that you said Bill Belichick should trade the farm for Josh Fields.
Yes. Give it to me.
So I have the number 4 pick. I already got the call from the guy who has the Patriots, and he's offering the farm. I might just pull it.
Let's go.
But
for the record, that guy should not make that trade until the 49ers pick is made, because if it is a smokescreen and they go just the field, which I personally believe they will, that's going to suck to have traded the farm for whatever's left.
Yeah.
4. Which is very interesting, because guess who has the number 3 overall pick in this mock draft?
Ooh.
Oh, might shake the farm up a little bit, get the chickens running around.
Yeah, there you go. So some of your favorite prospects in the upcoming draft, and we just mentioned Justin Fields, and I personally took a lot of heat because on my own Instagram, I said that Justin Fields is the best quarterback in this draft. Sorry, Trevor Lawrence, I said it. But some of your favorite guys, check it out.
I mean, I will jump right on that train with you. He's my number 1 fantasy quarterback in this draft. And I don't put him above as a pure prospect. Like if I had the Jaguars pick, I would still take Lawrence. I don't put him above there as a pure NFL prospect. But I think the gap is a lot closer than pretty much the entirety of draft consensus says that it is. I think Justin Fields is incredible. I think he's the most accurate guy in this class by a mile. I think he's the most dynamic guy in this class at that position. Trevor Lawrence is an incredible processor. He's got all the tools that you want, but I think there's a very good chance in 5-10 years that we're looking back and saying, wow, whoever got Justin Fields, whether it's the Niners or someone else, which would just be so dumb, they might have gotten the steal. So I love him. At running back, I love Javonte Williams. He's my number 1 running back overall, draft prospect and for fantasy. I think he's incredibly well-rounded, by far the most complete running back in this class. Everyone's excited about Najee Harris. He doesn't have the top-end speed. Everyone's excited about Travis Etienne. He has the top-end speed, but he doesn't have the agility and the vision. Javonte Williams has it all to me. He has everything that you could ask for. And so I think he's my favorite running back by far. At wide receiver, I could go with some easy ones like Devontae Smith. I absolutely love Devontae Smith. I guess I should talk about that because a lot of people rag on Devontae Smith and want to knock him down draft boards because he's too small. I think it's nonsense. He's unbelievable. By far the best receiver to me in this class, and I think he's going to make everyone look silly. But I'll throw you a sleeper name because it's my favorite, guys, is what you asked me, and that's Tylan Wallace. Tylan Wallace is probably my favorite prospect just from a pure Matt Okada's guy. He's kind of been forgotten about over the last couple of years because he missed a lot of games with injury and then had a slow 2020. But back in his sophomore season, he almost won the Biletnikoff Award. He had like 1,400 yards and 12 touchdowns. He is unbelievable on tape. His analytics are unbelievable. Everything you do when you scout a wide receiver, he is off the charts, except for the last couple seasons. Statistics don't show up like they do for maybe a Smith or Chase or even some other guys. So I freaking love Tylan Wallace, man. I hope he goes on day 2 of the draft, because if he does, I'm going to be every single dynasty league I'm going to be in. I'm going to be drafting him in the rookie draft. I really hope he goes somewhere good. I love him.
Yeah, he's got a similar story to one of my guys from a few years ago, Keenan Allen, when he was coming out. And I wanted the Chargers to get him so bad. And I was thinking we were going to use a 2nd-round pick on him, and he slid all the way to the 3rd round because, like you said, he also had a similar thing his junior and senior year where he just couldn't stay on the field. But when he was on the field, everyone saw how good he was, couldn't stay on the field, slid to the 3rd round, and the Chargers got him. Sneaky, sneaky pick. Something to always keep in mind, especially with like quarterbacks and talking fantasy football, is their situations also. I think the situation Justin Fields is going to land in is way better than both Lawrence and Zach Wilson in Jacksonville and New York, because Fields is either going to New England, San Francisco, possibly Atlanta, still an outside chance, or Denver. All those teams are going to have good offenses next year.
Yeah, man, honestly, the draft the entirety of the draft for me revolves around that pick at number 3. I am on pins and needles waiting to see what happens there, because if the Niners take him there, not only are they going to, I think, contend in that division and in the playoffs for the next, I don't know, decade with that coaching staff, that quarterback, and the skill position players they have, but Justin Fields is going to be an incredible win for fantasy, which I will be excited about. And I don't have to deal with him getting stuck somewhere that like New York or even Jacksonville, where things are messy at best and we don't trust the franchise.
Yeah, but too bad Mac Jones is so much better than all those guys, so we don't have to worry about it.
Don't do it, Kyle. Don't do it.
It's crazy the stuff that they find just to go, okay, we're gonna drop this guy in the draft. He doesn't weigh as much, we're gonna drop him. And then like Justin Fields, I'm trying to think of what I saw on him the other day, and I was like, really? That's something that you want to hold against him? Like, this guy has done a lot, and he should run. Like, people are like, he's a running quarterback. He actually should have ran more than what he did. Yeah. He's actually very good in the pocket, and he did a good job. And I read somebody put some percentages out there about how like Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones, like I want to say like 40% of their passes were to the line of scrimmage or before it, and Justin Fields and Wilson both were like 16 or 17%. So I mean, you look at the talent around them and where they're at. It's like, I don't know. I maybe I'm just biased now. Maybe I'm just on the Fields train, and anything people say about them, I'm like, I don't care. I'm taking them.
No, man. I mean, I think if you watch the tape on all 4 of these top guys and you just look at the ball, like who throws the best ball, there's no question in my mind that Justin Fields throws the best ball. Like, it's on a rope. It's beautiful to every area of the field, deep, the pinpoint accuracy. He is incredible. And then, like, if he was a complete pocket passer with no dynamic rushing ability, I'd still think he would be a top 5 draft pick prospect. But then he brings what you pointed out. It was like, even statistically, doesn't tell the whole story of how dynamic he is as a rusher in a lot of his seasons. And you add that on top, and this guy has a pretty high ceiling. It's going to be nice, I think.
If Cam Newton had some kind of accuracy when he was young.
Exactly.
I don't know. Like, some of these reports are crazy. Like Joe was saying, like the report came out that he doesn't have a work ethic. Like, I watched a whole documentary on this kid when he was a high schooler, and his work ethic was like head and shoulders above all the other guys on the documentary. Like, Jake Fromm was in the same season as Justin Fields, and there's a wide gap between what Justin Fields was doing in high school and Jake Fromm was doing in high school. You see Jake Fromm having swimming pool parties, and they go to Justin Fields and he's in the gym. So, like, well, where are these reports coming from? Since high school, I have loved this kid as a quarterback and as a prospect, and I thought he was going to go to Georgia and take Jake Fromm's spot, but he ended up in Ohio State. But like, the reports are from a high school coach that he doesn't have a work ethic, but then there's a documentary on his work ethic. What?
Look, I'm a Raider fan. So 49ers, go ahead and take Mac Jones. I don't want to see the 49ers do good. So go ahead. Mac Jones to the 49ers all day. I'll let it happen.
Oh, boy. Well, the worst thing about that is I feel a lot of people are saying that should happen because it's the kind of quarterbacks Kyle Shanahan has had. And I talk about this on the NFL Fantasy show. Just because you've had pocket passer, game manager quarterbacks and you've done good stuff with them because you're a really, really good offensive-minded head coach doesn't mean that that's what you want to deal with. You don't want to eat a slice of plain bread when you could have a filet mignon. And that's what Justin Fields is. Hard pass on the Mac Jones thing. I don't understand. I think it's a smokescreen personally, and I think they're going to go that way.
Yeah. And I found the thing that the other day that I saw, and I was like, no way. Like, and it's somebody, you know, that I like, Chris Mortensen. I like watching him. And he said the other day, he said, Justin Fields has bad throwing mechanics because he's been playing baseball, a sport he hasn't played since 2018. And I'm like, I replied to that one and you know, on Twitter, and I'm like, really? Like, Russell Wilson doesn't play football. Kyle Murray, the jersey behind you, he doesn't play baseball. Like, come on. Like, anything to drop this kid they're throwing out there.
Yeah, it's nonsense. You can almost certainly pick a top quarterback in the NFL, and he played baseball at some point. Tom Brady got drafted by Major League Baseball. That one was just, it just seemed like making things up to cause a stir, to be honest.
Maybe
I
it's
don't
all
see any
Belichick.
flaws in Justin Fields, to be honest. He's amazing.
Honestly,
All Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick's in everybody's ear to drop. Hey, tell him that he's doing this.
I
He's
wish.
just sprinkling all around. Honestly,
Oh.
you could probably go to any roster in the NFL all the way down the depth chart, and most of those quarterbacks probably played baseball, at least in high school, at the very minimum. Usually that's how the football coach finds the quarterback. He's pitching for the baseball team his freshman year. I mean, that's usually how this goes down. A guy by the name of Brian Bolster on one of our other shows, Sports Force, said that Mac Jones is the safe pick, and everyone started to freak out a little bit. What he was saying is safely getting a Kirk Cousins kind of guy, safely getting a Jimmy G kind of guy, safely, and Matt Ryan played at a high level at certain points, but like a Matt Ryan type of guys that Mike Shanahan is used to. And Brian was saying Shanahan's got to throw all that out the window, and it's time to go for that filet mignon. Like you said, it's time to take it to the next level, because those safety kind of guys are only going to get you so far, and that's Super Bowl losses. So if he wants to take that next step, make that one play, maybe it's a guy that can move the ball with his legs as well. I also think that the 49ers are going to take Justin Fields, and I think I'm going to take Brian's advice into my pick on the mock draft on Saturday, right before Joe's pick.
Maybe we'll have to get Matt to come on one of our mock drafts.
Yeah.
And he can be like, I'm taking Justin Fields right now. It's like, hey, you have the number 1 pick. What are you doing? Wait, hold on.
Yep. Give me.
In our mock drafts, we don't even do the number 1 pick. We're like, all right, Trevor Lawrence, let's move on.
That's fair.
But we'll move on from there too, because we just had a retirement in the NFL. Well, it was like a release / retirement. It was Julian Edelman has retired. My question is, and this is a big question going around, and now it's funny because now you see, it's crazy. We've been on Patriots talk for a while, but like a lot of people have been coming out, right? A lot of people, like, either they love Julian Edelman or they hate him, and there's like no in between right now. So is he a Hall of Famer? And that's been the question going around. And if he's not, what should be the criteria for the Hall of Fame?
This is a really tough one, in my opinion. Tough to answer for me, if for no other reason than he's probably my second favorite NFL player of all time behind Tom Brady. I'm a Patriots fan through and through, have been for 2 decades, since just before Brady got drafted. And Edelman has been like, he's just such a lovable player to have on your team, right? And he's done so much great stuff for the team. And I tweeted something the other day when this information started to, or this debate started to, crop up on Twitter, and said, you can believe both things, that his regular season career and his overall stats as a receiver do not hold a candle to the Hall of Fame. And that what he did in the playoffs, what he did in Super Bowls, what he did when it mattered most for this franchise that became the greatest dynasty of any sports ever, it might put him in the consideration to be a not first ballot, but somewhere down the line Hall of Famer. Now, do I think he absolutely should be? I think my answer to that is probably no. Do I think that he might end up in the Hall of Fame? I think my answer to that is probably yes. And to the second part of your question, and I think that's where it matters for Edelman, there's different ways to get into the Hall of Fame, right? So people talk about longevity and career stats, and guys like Marcus Allen, who had a few good years, but then did almost nothing for the whole rest of his career, or Art Monk, who had 16 seasons as an NFL wide receiver, finished with the most receptions all time, but he only had 3 seasons as a Pro Bowler and was not that dominant for most of his career. Frank Gore, right? He's going to finish number 3 all time in rushing. He had a decent number of seasons, but was he ever the best running back in the NFL? Do we look back at him and think he's one of the greatest ever? Probably not, but is he going to make it to the Hall of Fame? Probably. So there's that longevity argument. There's the short-term dominance argument, where are you just the best player in the entire league at your position for a few years, right? Calvin Johnson didn't have that long of a career, but there's no question in anyone's mind he was a first ballot Hall of Famer because he was the best, possibly the most dominant we've ever seen, but certainly when he was playing, he was the best. And that is probably one of the easiest go-tos for Hall of Fame candidacy. But then there's a third category, and this is where I think Julian Edelman might fall. It's kind of this intangibles, mystique, story of the NFL argument, where people say, can you tell a story of the NFL without this player? And if you can't, maybe he belongs in the Hall of Fame. You've got a bunch of quarterbacks who fall into that category. Guys like Troy Aikman, Eli Manning will probably get there someday, even though I don't think he should. Joe Namath, Bob Greasy, guys who, if you look at their stats, they're actually, even for their time period, weren't that good. Their career stats are not that great, but they were part of incredible dynasties. They won amazing Super Bowls. They beat the Patriots twice, including the undefeated team. And so they're going to get to the Hall of Fame. The number one guy that I turn to when we're talking about Julian Edelman is Lynn Swann. Okay. What does everyone remember about Lynn Swann? The Super Bowl 10, he was the MVP. He had 2 amazing catches, one of which is considered one of the greatest catches of all time. It actually looked a lot like a certain catch that Julian Edelman made in Super Bowl 51, jumping up on top of a defender, ball bouncing in the air, catching it as he falls to the ground. He did not have a great career. Played 9 seasons, made 3 Pro Bowls. He was kind of decent in 2 of those seasons statistically because he scored a lot of touchdowns, but he was never tops in the league in catches or yards. But he has 4 Super Bowl rings. He was part of the second greatest dynasty in NFL history. He won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. He has those Super Bowl moments, and so he made the Hall of Fame. In my opinion, Lynn Swann and Julian Edelman are pretty much comparable on almost every front. Julian Edelman was dominant as a receiver for what the position he played, the slot receiver, making catches, getting first downs, a couple of years in his career, but generally overall career stats not that great. But when you get to the Super Bowls, he won an MVP. He made the most, in my opinion, unbelievable play, most memorable play in the most memorable Super Bowl of all time. And he was the go-to guy for the greatest quarterback of all time for nearly a decade.
Well, Lynn Swann also had half of the receptions that he had.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a different time, right? So the numbers are a little different, but even if you just compare Lynn Swann to the guys he was playing with, he was never matching up in those numbers.
Well, you're a Patriot fan and a wide receiver certified scout. Let me ask you this one. Deion Branch. What do you think about Deion Branch? Because Deion Branch would have better numbers than Julian Edelman, right?
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting one too. You can give the Super Bowl conversation there as well. I don't think that he was the go-to guy as long and the face of the skill position players as long as Edelman was for this dynasty. And I got to another argument with someone on Twitter the other day about how much the franchise you play for matters. So, a guy like Troy Aikman, okay, he was the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys during the dynasty. If he was the quarterback for the Bills or the Browns during that time, teams that weren't that great, and he was putting up the same stats, it wouldn't even be close. Or if you're Bob Greasy and you sneak in on the undefeated Dolphins team and really you're not that great overall, mostly, you sneak in on the merit of things like that. So, but Deion Branch, I think he has less of a case than Edelman. I know the stats are bigger, but I don't think his stats are enough to meet those stat criteria that I mentioned, like those first 2. And I don't think that his intangible story of the NFL mystique case or resume, if you will, matches up to Edelman's. So I don't think he makes it based off his own stats. And I think that he's lesser in that other category than Edelman is. So I think he has less of a chance of making it to the Hall of Fame. Again, though, I think Edelman himself is even a borderline guy, in my opinion, and I'm a biased Patriots fan. But I do think there's a chance that the NFL will put him there at some point, not on the first ballot.
See, I'm a Raider fan, so anytime that I can smash the Patriots down just a little bit, I'm going to try to do it. And so that, I mean, don't get me wrong. What Edelman did, Edelman had, I would say, 3 great years, and then the rest of them were kind of average. Yeah. I like, especially like fantasy-wise, if you had him for those couple of years, you were like, yes, he's great. He's awesome. But then I look at guys like Jimmy Smith and Torrey Holt that were great when I was young, and I'm like, where are they? Where's the love for them? And then the other day on the Tackling Dummies YouTube channel with James Coe and Adam Rank, if you guys haven't watched that, go check it out. A little plug for them because that show is awesome and nobody watches it for some reason. It's starting up. But I told them that, and they kind of laughed at me, but I don't know. I threw it out as a joke, but I was like, Julian Edelman is basically the Ricky Prohl of the Patriots. Remember Ricky Prohl from back in the day with the St. Louis high flying offense?
So
that's what I threw out there, and they were like, no. But if you look at Ricky Prohl's numbers, they dominate Julian Edelman too. But yeah, I guess you're gonna have to look in. I guess playoff performances and Super Bowl performances have to go into it because, like you said, Eli Manning didn't have a great career, but he did beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl twice. And to me, I'm like, yeah, Eli Manning's a Hall of Famer. I'll put him in. So you might have won me over just a little bit with Julian Edelman. Just a little bit.
I do have to ask because I personally hate Eli Manning more than any other player in NFL history because of what he did to my Patriots. Do you feel that way about Tom Brady and the Patriots because of the Tuck rule? Is that still a thing?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Oh, I was on. You can ask Mike. You can ask everybody. I will not give Tom Brady credit for anything, even this year. He's not even on the Patriots. I still won't give him credit. No, he's done.
That's awesome.
That was the pivot point in Tom Brady's career for Joe Morley. If that never happens, Tom Brady doesn't exist in his mind. So it burns at his soul. But I think really the confusion is like, what's the criteria of a Hall of Famer? The NFL Hall of Fame needs to come out with this and let us know. Because it seems like for every position is different, and it can be different for every position. I would love just to have like a list, like what exactly are they looking at to determine it? Because another guy to talk about in this conversation is a guy like Phillip Rivers. Joe already knows what I'm going to say next. Like one day we're going to get to a point. I don't think he's going to be a first ballot because he didn't win the Super Bowl. He matches at almost every other box except for he didn't win that Super Bowl. He's got the stats. He's kind of was around the league, a starter for almost 20 years and everything like that. Just didn't ever get that Super Bowl because he was on the Chargers where, you know, they didn't quite put good teams around him. Only like once or twice did I think the Chargers had a legitimate contention for that level of a title. But in a couple of years, when they already inducted Drew Brees, inducted Tom Brady, inducted the great quarterbacks of this era, Aaron Rodgers, are we going to go for like 10 years without inducting a quarterback while guys like Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, all these guys are in the middle of their prime? Is it just going to be crickets? No quarterbacks? No, they're going to put Phillip Rivers in. Is the same thing going to happen with Julian Edelman? Probably.
Well, the real thing there that all these Edelman Hall of Fame haters should pay attention to is I think it's pretty general consensus that Eli is more likely to make it, right? But Phillip outdid him across the board in every way, statistically, career stats, in any given like section of his career being more dominant. I think there were times where Phillip Rivers was one of the best in the league. I don't know if Eli ever was that, but Eli is well, not first ballot, but he is likely to make it before Phillip for one reason, because he beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl twice, including the undefeated team. 2 games that he won mostly on the merits of a really good defense and some weird catches. That is why he will beat Phillip Rivers to the Hall of Fame. And so to say that makes sense for the Hall of Fame criteria, but that Edelman should be thrown out seems a little oxymoronic.
Yeah. When you look at that draft class of actual quarterback play on the field, you take out the Super Bowls, quarterback play on the field. Ben Roethlisberger and Phillip Rivers were way better than Eli Manning. He just happened to be in that spot at that moment, and he did make those plays, especially the helmet catch. He did have to make a play to get that down the field.
Yeah.
But one play, send you the Hall of Fame, and in my opinion, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, especially with the Manning name. I think he is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
And as a Raider fan and Patriot haters, alumni, we will be pushing for Eli Manning to make the Hall of Fame.
Oh no!
We should just start getting it ready. All right, now it's like he's still a couple years away, but we'll do it. We'll start the hashtag now.
Size of jacket.
It's funny because in my mind, I've legitimately blocked out the first part of that helmet catch play because of how amazing he was in the first part of that play. So when I think back to those games and that play, I don't think about it. But then you bring it up just now, and I remember, gosh darn it, he was really good on that play. He actually made that happen. I hate his guts so much though.
Do you think this is going a little bit off topic, but people like Eli Manning and Jay Cutler, like they always had that look, like they weren't like interested, like nothing was going on. It was just like, here we go,
face.
Like, do you think it just like that lowers how good? Because I always thought, and you know, one of the people that you work with, Adam Rank, he always builds up Jay Cutler. Do you think that in people's eyes that it lowers them a little bit?
I think to a degree it does. And if you want like a inverse example, look at Joe Namath. He was so charismatic, so cool, predicting Super Bowls, wearing these coats, you know, being all popular with the women, and I think that because that is like in some way embodied into the quarterback position, that it kind of maybe raises up a little bit how you see him. You see him as this like amazing superstar quarterback, and then you watch these guys looking like they got punched in the face on the sideline or smoked a couple too many things they shouldn't be allowed to smoke. And yeah, I think it might actually affect a little bit people's perspective of those guys.
Yeah, the Giants needed to keep that tradition going when they drafted Daniel Jones, because he looks similar on the sideline. Like he just got punched in the face.
I don't know. I'm an emotional in the moment kind of guy, so I'm like, I don't know how they can keep it in and be so calm. And I guess it would be calm and cool because that's all they're doing. I celebrate every touchdown, and I don't care if my team loses 31-7, but that first touchdown they scored, it was like they were up 7-0. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And then it's like, all right. Then I get back to it, but I don't know. I don't know how they keep that. It's amazing to me. But we'll move on. We'll move on to some fantasy football because I know Mike is going to try to bring up Phillip Rivers as much as we can if we keep talking about the Hall of Fame, and I'm over it already. I'm over the Phillip Rivers talk.
I actually was going to go Joe Burrow this time, but we can move on to the next time.
Fantasy football, and that's the awesome thing about it is it's 24/7, like we just said, and Mr. 24/7 football 24/7 is here. So what? Let's get to the first round. Last year, a lot of people took some people in the first round that they might not like. Michael Thomas. We had Barkley injury. We had the CMC injury. You think that's going to shake up the fantasy first round, and are we going to see some newer faces in the first round of fantasy drafts this year?
I don't know if the injuries will shake it up too much, just because we still have to return to that same well every year of there's only 5 or 6 super elite running backs. I know they got injured last year and let me down, but I still need one again this year. So I'm going to go back to that well. So I think most of those guys will probably still be there and at the very top. But yeah, there will be some guys I think that sneak into, if not the first round, kind of that fringe of the second round, who weren't there last year. Certainly Jonathan Taylor will be close. I think he might be back end of the first round. He had a great rookie season that got stronger as the year went on, and he's an incredible running back who is probably going to take another step forward. So I like that pick, him going in the first round. I think Travis Kelce, moving to tight end, might make his way into the first round. And he typically went in like second, third for most of the last few years. But at this point, we've gotten to this. And this one might have to do with the Kittle injury, too, because we only got to see Kelce in that between that duo. But he's just so constantly dominant at a position that is so shallow that the advantage he gives, I think, might boost him into the first round. There's some wide receivers who broke out last year in big ways that might sneak there that weren't there last year. Javonte Adams was kind of a fringe guy. He'll definitely be in there, in my opinion, because he was the best last year. Stephon Diggs, most people, I think, will take him early second, but there's a chance he gets into the first round of a lot of leagues. He was the number one receiver, led the league in receptions and yards, so he'll be in that conversation. DK Metcalf could get up there. I don't think the first round, but he'll get up there. So, yeah, there's a lot of guys who broke out big last year that I think could change up the way things look at the top of the draft.
It's funny that you bring up Travis Kelce, because we had Marcus Grant on the show, and he said that he would feel comfortable taking him number 5 overall.
Yes.
Number 5 overall. And it shocked us. Like, we were like, what? And it made us like post some things like, would you guys be willing to take a tight end 5th overall? But like you said, you're looking at production, and I don't think it matters anymore of the position. If you're looking at the overall play, how many points per game they're getting you. I think that's what it comes down to. And like, I was going to stay away from CMC and all them this year. And I'm like, and I was keep telling myself, why? Like, I like the Sam Darnold to Carolina. I think that's going to boost them up just a little bit more with that offense. But let me ask you one guy, because this guy I got a lot of heat for last year because I was saying he's a little inconsistent, but I said I wanted to see him get more consistent. He did throughout last year, but now he lost his number 2 wide receiver, A.J. Brown. Your thoughts on him?
I love the crap out of A.J. Brown. So if you're ever going to ask me questions about A.J. Brown, you better tighten your seatbelt. I think he is unbelievable as a wide receiver, and I am begging the Titans. I'm going to send them a letter, emails, Twitter, whatever it takes. Give this man 130, 140 targets. I think there's a decent chance it finally happens this year with Corey Davis gone. And if he does that, like there is a legitimate possibility he is the most efficient wide receiver in the NFL. And he scored 11 touchdowns last year on, I think, like 105 targets, just over 100. If he gets 130, 140 targets like he probably should, and he stays as efficient as he is, or even just close to that, and he still keeps that kind of touchdown rate, we're talking about the wide receiver one kind of upside. Is he going to be there? I'm not going to draft him there, but does he have the possibility? Absolutely. And will I draft him in the second round if I need to? Probably, yeah. I think he's amazing.
AJ Brown is a freak of nature. That dude is ridiculous. And I remember last year, most of the talk going into the season was Terry McLaurin versus DK Metcalf. Which guy is going to get better? And I was guilty of it as well. I was pumping up that argument as well in a few different posts with Terry and DK. But I think more and more we get to see AJ Brown ball out, the more and more I'm starting to like AJ Brown. He's like a blend of the two. All the good things Terry does, all the good things DK does, put them together, and you got AJ Brown.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at different attributes of what makes a wide receiver good, right? From a route running standpoint, he's probably top 15, top 20 in the NFL, which is really, really good. And from a yards after the catch standpoint, when I say he is number one or top 3 at the worst, I am not exaggerating. He is unbelievable with the ball in his hands. And that's a large part of the reason he's so efficient, because where a lot of receivers would, catch a 10-yard slant and take it for 2 more yards, he managed to take it for 20 more yards instead. And it's unbelievable stuff. So of my many wishes for the 2021 season, Justin Fields of the Patriots is probably number 1, but somewhere in my top 5 is give AJ Brown 130 targets.
How do you not win a national championship with DK Metcalf and AJ Brown as your top wide receivers is behind me? But so you wouldn't be happy if the Titans go first round and they take like a Bateman or Rondale Moore or somebody else with them?
Well, if it was one of those two guys in particular, I wouldn't, especially if it was Rondale Moore, I wouldn't cry too much, because I'm not quite as high on those guys as consensus. And I think Rondale Moore would be a different kind of receiver that wouldn't really threaten what AJ Brown does. Bateman a little bit closer, so I probably would prefer if that didn't happen. But all things considered, given their wide receiver depth chart, they're going to draft someone at some point, maybe a couple someones. So if it's in the first round, that hurts more. It lowers the chances Brown gets 130 targets, probably, but still he'll be the wide receiver 1. He'll be the veteran, and the rookie is not going to take 130 targets himself. So I think there's still a good chance he does that, even if they take someone there. I think it's more likely they go defense. They really need to go pass rush and take a couple receivers, considering the depth of this class, later in the draft, maybe day 2, day 3. That would be, if I was the Titans, what I would do. So that's what I'm crossing my fingers they do, so AJ Brown gets his targets.
If they do go wide receiver early, I think Rondale Moore would be a good fit. And I don't think, like you said, I don't think it'll take away from AJ Brown too much, because I think Rondale Moore is going to come in for the Titans and just be a guy that's going to take the lid off the defense. And also in the play action game, you still have Derrick Henry on that team. That team is a fantasy football production monster, that offense with AJ Brown, Ryan Tannehill, and Derrick Henry. But teams got to come up to try and stop the run, which just leaves it for Moore to fly over the top, because that dude is ridiculously fast if he could stay healthy. So I think really he would just come in to bust the lid off the defense. The Titans offense is going to be amazing next year regardless, I think, with AJ Brown's development, Derrick Henry's in his prime, and Ryan Tannehill leading the way.
They have a new offensive coordinator over there, and somebody posted on Twitter, and they were like, what do you think of the new Titans offense with the new coordinator? Do you think they're going to be better? I go, they still have a guy named Derrick Henry, right? They still got him. I think they'll be all right.
Yeah.
But yeah, AJ Brown, I'm still kind of hit. Like you said, I could see possibly in my mind taking him at the end, like, of the first round, depending on if it's a 12 or a 10 or 12 man league, depending on what you're doing. I could still do it. But it'd be hard for me. Just, I don't know.
I don't think you have to. I think you can get him in the second round, probably, in most leagues.
But you have to trust Tannehill. That's what you have to do, right? You have
yes.
If you're going to trust the wide receiver, you have to trust the quarterback, the honesty. I have an idea. I have an idea. How about we tell the NFL, we write letters to the NFL, and we get a fantasy football guy on each one of their draft in their draft rooms. We got to put them in their draft rooms, and then we tell them like, hey, that's not going to work fantasy wise. You can't take that guy.
We absolutely need this. I don't know why it hasn't happened already. I think it's going to happen at some point. You know, all these teams are hiring all these analytics guys now. Give it 10 more years, they're going to start hiring these fantasy football guys. Because listen, the whole fantasy football community knows Justin Fields is better than Mac Jones. Mm-hmm. Why is it that the whole NFL community can't recognize that, but the whole fantasy football community can? And we are going to be right in 10 years.
100%. Yeah. Well, you're 100% right. I think that we are going to be right in 10 years.
Hey, we've been
telling the Titans to draft a cornerback. Draft a cornerback.
Mm-hmm. Go defense.
So there you go. NFL teams, if you're listening, Matt Okada is ready to come to your draft room this week. He'll be in there and he'll tell you this guy is the best fit. Like, that's all you do as fantasy football. You put teams together. We put teams together on our team, and like this. Hey, this is gonna be a good week right here. These guys work good together. Like, come on.
Call me, Bill. Call me.
Yeah. You don't need. You don't want Belichick's dog to be drafting again this year.
Hey, Nick Casario's out. They need us. They need someone else. I'm here.
There you
Nick
go.
Casario's doing a great job over in Houston right now.
Woo.
I think they've signed 30 free agents. Is that what it is? Houston, something like that. They've been bringing some people in, and we won't get on that Houston thing right now. But I have one more name for you, Cam Akers. Cam Akers has been built up a lot, and everybody who talks to me always asks me about Cam Akers. Your thoughts on Cam Akers?
I like Cam Akers. I liked him a lot as a prospect. I think he made the most of a very poor situation in college, and I liked what I saw on tape with him. So I was pretty excited about him coming into 2020 as a rookie even, and he eventually started paying off on that excitement. It took a while, and it really kicked into full gear in the playoffs, but that's the last thing we saw of him. So I think there's a decent chance that we get to see more of that in 2021 in his second season. But perhaps most importantly, of anything to do with any Rams player on the offense, is the change at quarterback. It makes a big difference, in my opinion, to have Matthew Stafford instead of Jared Goff to every position, especially to Cam Akers, because Jared Goff is not a threat, right? Sean McVay is a threat, and so you have to worry about what Sean McVay will try to figure out to do with Jared Goff. But Jared Goff is not a threat, so you don't have to worry about him. The things Todd Gurley was able to do with Goff at quarterback just speak even more to how incredible Gurley was and how good Sean McVay is. But with Stafford there instead, I think Stafford is arguably one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. He's been stuck in this mire of Detroit for his entire career. Now he gets to go play with Sean McVay and those weapons in LA. That is going to be a terrifying offense to deal with from both sides, pass and run. And I think it's going to open up things for Cam Akers a lot. So even if he doesn't get like 250 carries, and there's a chance that McVay will try to mix things up. Although if he starts to go the Gurley route, we saw what that meant for Gurley, and I think that's possible with Cam Akers. But even if it's not the case, I think he's going to be super efficient, and I think he's going to score a lot of touchdowns, just like Gurley did in his heyday with McVay, 16, 17 touchdown kind of upside. I can see that for Cam Akers. So I'm excited about him. I like him a lot.
And you probably don't need to use a first-round pick. May not even need to use a second-round pick on him.
For sure.
You may go all the way to the third round. The Rams are going to be scary because you're talking about the offense, and I know this isn't a fantasy standpoint, and then they have the defense.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the Rams playing in a home Super Bowl here in a year. I honestly wouldn't be surprised. And when they first did the trade, everyone started freaking out about the Rams, Super Bowl favorites. And then the talk just completely turned off. Guys, let's start talking about it again. This team.
Yeah, I don't know what the odds are, or if you guys are betting men, but I'm sure that they're decent for the Rams to win the Super Bowl, and I would get in on that with you because I think there's a good chance.
This team's gonna be legit.
There you go. So I'm gonna target Cam Akers, and you're saying I don't have to worry about first round, so I might be able to do that no running back strategy. No, I'm still not gonna do it. Still can't buy into that strategy.
Whoa.
There's no
way. It's so
way.
Scary.
The no running back strategy, people do it, and if you get away with it, good for you. I still can't do it.
It takes luck, honestly.
Yeah, it almost always blows up in my face because I went through like a 2-year phase of that because I was on the Derrick Henry train just a little bit too early, his first couple seasons. So I kept taking him and getting disappointed. So I was just, DeMarco Murray was taking all of his carries and everything. So I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm not going to worry about running backs until like round 3 this year. That didn't work out. That didn't work out. Then I had Devontae Adams not playing in games.
I just thought of this one too. And everybody's high on this rookie coming in. And I'm like, calm down. He's a rookie. Rookies not everybody can come in and be a Justin Jefferson. But I mean, I'm going to go with Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is like getting people are going to overdraft Kyle Pitts. I guarantee it. And they're going to be like, this is the tight end. He's going to win it. And I understand the tight end position in fantasy football is already small as it is. Like there's not a lot of great names. So if you're going to pick somebody and you want to go for the value and probably upside of them, I guess is what you would say. Are you taking a chance on Kyle Pitts?
It depends on where he ends up going in draft. And I honestly do not know where he's going to go. I'm going to be super curious to see that over the course of the summer with mock drafts and ADP and things like that. Where is he falling? Listen, he's a rookie tight end. Betting on a rookie tight end is straight up dumb. It's not just like questionable. It's straight up dumb. They do not succeed out the gate almost ever. Evan Ingram had a really solid season. That's the only guy in recent memory to really do it. On the flip side of that, Kyle Pitts is possibly the most dynamic tight end prospect we've ever seen. He would be a first-round wide receiver if he was playing that position in the NFL, but he's playing tight end, which is good for your fantasy team, and it's good for his NFL prospects too because of the ways you can scheme a tight end open, and he can get open on his own. So it's really tough. If he's going like around tight end 10 in the middle to late rounds, absolutely I would draft him because those guys are crapshoots anyways. The guy you draft at tight end 10 is just as likely to finish as tight end 20 as he is to finish at tight end 5. It's a hot mess back there once you get out of the elite 3 and then the secondary elite 2 or 3 guys like Andrews and Hawkinson. So if he's going around there, I will draft the heck out of Kyle Pitts. But if people get super excited, if he goes in the top 5 or the top 6 of the draft and he's going right after those elite 3 and he's going in like the 6th round, that's really risky. I don't know if I could buy in on that. So we'll have to see where he goes. I would like to try to get him in like the 9th, 8th, 9th, 10th round, maybe around tight end 8, 9, somewhere in that range. If he's going there, I think you should try snapping him up, and I think he could surprise.
I'm willing to risk it. But then again, I lose a lot of fantasy football championships, so maybe you shouldn't listen. Maybe you shouldn't listen to me. I just feel like outside of Kelce and Waller, and I'm excluding Kittle because I have him in my dynasty league, and I love him. Every time he's on the field, he always produces. That's the key. Every time he's on the field, and his play style doesn't allow him to make it through a 16-game season and now a 17-game season. So I like Waller a little bit better than Kittle heading into this season. So outside of Waller and Kelce, like you said, it's almost a crapshoot. You have no idea what's going to happen. I think those New England tight ends are going to be valuable in fantasy this year. But other than that, not too high on any specific tight end. And I'm like, okay, if I don't get Kelce or Waller, I'm going for this guy. So I'm willing to wait and sit back and take a chance on Kyle Pitts and maybe pair him with a guy like Jared Cook or someone that can just give you something if Kyle Pitts completely falls.
Yeah, that's a killer strategy. I really like that actually. And the thing about Pitts is if you get him in that in the middle to late rounds, 8th, 9th, 10th, there is a very good chance he wins you your fantasy league, and there's not really a chance at that draft capital that he loses you your fantasy league. So that's what makes him pretty interesting to me in that range.
It also depends on where he goes. If he goes to Miami, I'm obviously going to be a lot lower on him with Gesicki there, and Tua's not really going to be a high-flying quarterback. But let's say Cincinnati pulls the trigger on him. That will be a ton of fun. That Cincinnati offense needs one more weapon. Joe Burrow, is going to throw the ball 60 times a game or something ridiculous.
Yep.
Like it just depends on the situation also for me.
Yep.
I wish I had my belt. It's across the room. I don't want to go grab it real quick. But I won my fantasy football championship last year. And now that I think about it, I had 3 rookies on there on my team. So like you said, like when you said that Kyle Pitts is that he could win it for you, but if you got him late, like you got to take that chance where it's not going to hurt you and it could help you. Because I had Justin Herbert, DeAndre Swift, and Justin Jefferson on my fantasy roster last year, and I won that championship. Just throwing that out there again for everybody who's watching in my league. Ha ha! In your faces.
I'm just not a fan of Justin Herbert winning Raiders fans fantasy championships.
Yeah, well, we brought this up. Who were we talking to? I forget who we were talking to. I think it was your co-host Marcus Grant as well. And I told him, I said, did I break a rule because I played Justin Herbert against my Raiders on that Thursday night, and I was like thinking. And Mike's a Charger fan, so he was like, I can't believe you went against your own team for fantasy football. But
I think it depends on the kind of person you are. Like, if you are made happy by Justin Herbert destroying the Raiders and your fantasy team winning, even though the Raiders lose, if that's the kind of person you are, then you got to do it. If you're the kind of person who that just makes everything worse, maybe you go to your backup. I don't know.
I'm just a realist Raider fan. I knew that our defense isn't good, so it's going to be a shootout. So if I could see the Raiders win, 38-34, and Justin Herbert put up, 300 yards plus some, 3 touchdowns, I'll take it. And the Raiders still win.
And the game winning
fantasy.
And Justin Herbert also had the game winning touchdown that game. I just want to point out that was the famous. I was in the first time we heard him speak, other than calling a cadence. But Joe. Who was the backup? Was it Derek Carr? I think if I remember right, it was Derek Carr, but I could be wrong. Yeah, like that made it a lot worse.
That does make it worse.
over Derek Carr. If you would have played Derek Carr in that game, he pulled his groin on the first drive. You'd have lost.
Oh man.
Yeah, I did. I made the right choice. Ended up winning the league, and that's great for me. So, but it's been a great time, Matt. I love the energy and acknowledge that you brought. And we made a new thing. I'm gonna start this right now. I'm gonna start typing it up. The NFL, all the NFL teams. We're gonna put fantasy experts in your draft rooms.
Let's do it.
I gotta type it up because we had James. Now that I remember James Coe, I gotta do it for James Coe too, because James Coe wants to put a Madden player in each one of their rooms too. Because he said that Madden, the top NFL Madden players could teach quarterbacks everything.
Oh yeah.
So we'll do that.
Scheme recognition, defenses, they know what they're doing.
So we're changing the game of football right here on this show with Matt Okada, and the NFL world's not going to know what's going to hit them now. Mr. Football 24/7 just changed the world, the landscape.
Let's get it.
Matt, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a great time. You did great. I'm supposed to say you stepped into the war zone and you did great. You guys make sure to check out the BallBlast Football podcast and NFL Fantasy Live podcast that you've been doing as well. Anything else that you wanna shout out?
Twitter is at Matt Okada. If you want to hit me up with questions or shame me for my Edelman Hall of Fame takes, you can do that. I'm having fun talking football. And if you want to try to get me to back into my fandom of other sports, come at me, because I really need it. I miss baseball and hockey. I never was a huge basketball guy, but baseball and hockey, I miss them. But football's still 24/7. So good luck.
I might sprinkle a little bit of Mike Trout in there. Just a little bit.
I was gonna say, he says he's an Angel fan, guys. So they have the best player right there
ever
in his backyard, and he's watching football.
Yeah. We got to put someone around Mike Trout before I can get too excited. We'll see.
Hey, or you could just come on over to the blue side. Come on
over
to the blue side of LA.
Never.
We won't blame you. We won't blame it on you. We won't tell anyone either. We could just edit this part out, switch over. We got a couple guys to get root for, not just Mike Trout. We got a couple guys.
My dad would be a fan of that because he's been a lifelong Dodgers fan. We met Tommy Lasorda and stuff like that. So he would be all about me making that switch, but I would hate myself.
My dad's a 49ers fan. Oh, man. Those are fun.
Yeah.
My son's the Chargers fan. He's the only one wearing blue. He's just mad. I wore a Chargers jersey to the 49ers Super Bowl game. That really then they lost.
And you've been losing ever since. Anyways.
Hey.
Woo! Take my finger. Matt, thank you for coming on. You did a great job. You guys already know. You guys will see me and Mike on Friday Night War. So, Mike, see you on Friday.